So Deuteronomy 2 is an interesting chapter of the book of Deuteronomy. The book of Deuteronomy was written by Moses as a book to remind the next generation of the things that they saw and witnessed while they were in the wilderness, and to remember the past, most importantly, to remember why the first generation couldn't cross over into the promised land. And interestingly enough, I do think, and a lot of other scholars believe, that Deuteronomy may have been Jesus's favorite book of Moses, because he quotes it quite often in the Gospels, and he uses that specifically to in his wilderness when he was fasting for 40 days and was tempted by Satan. And I find that pretty interesting, right? And also, I want to say in Numbers, maybe also in Exodus, it is a requirement for the Jewish people to read it every 7 years. And that's every 7 years is about like the time of Jubilee, right? And it's like your Sabbath rest. And so it's interesting that at the time that you're coming to a point of rest, that you read Deuteronomy, which was written when the next generation was going to rest in the promised land. And I think Christians should do the same thing. Read the book of Deuteronomy as often as you can, because essentially it summarizes everything nicely. And, and it encourages us to remember our own, what some, I'm, I'm trying not to use too many like Christian terms. I was going to say our wilderness season, where God is kind of leading us after our exodus, after we've been delivered, and we're kind of following him and depending on him and learning God as our freedom, our provider, the one that gives us water, living water, and all our provisions, and is also our healer. And it kind of shows you like where God has saved you from, and the things that he wants you to learn from your mistakes, right, in the wilderness, and why you've been circling around this for so many years, etc., etc. Learn from the past. And when you go forward into the land of promise, into what God has promised you, because he is always faithful to fulfill his promise, make sure that you don't forget him as the one that you depended on. When you go into the land of abundance, still know that he is the one that provides for you. It's not by your own efforts, right? And then in Deuteronomy 2, it talks about, like summarization of the years in the desert. And then, Moses mentions how not to take the land of the Edomites and the Ammonites and the Moabites, and those are the relatives of the Israelites, right? The Edomites were related to Esau, and Ammon and Moab were related to Lot. And so, they're all relatives, right? And God gave them their land, and they were able to conquer the giants. So how much more those that don't even know that they're like essentially a part of the promise, and that they're like only grafted in because of the faithfulness of their predecessors, and they are wicked people, and God still let them conquer the land as a fulfillment of his promise to Lot and to Esau, according to the promise of Abraham, right? And like how much more will it be for those who are in direct descent of the child of promise, Isaac and Jacob, through Abraham. And so that's why God's like, don't be afraid, or I'll be with you, and so that's why he mentions that, like, this was the land that I gave to the Edomites, to the Ammonites, to the Moabites. So like, don't take their possession, because that was what I gave them. Right. Um, and so I kind of find it a very encouraging message that, like, you know, the wicked do prosper in the world, and that's just a fact because the ruler of this world, in the antichrist spirits, like, reigns, and it's just very profound how we can cross over with the victory and with the confidence that God goes before us, and that He is with us, and that we can conquer whatever He sets in our path, even if it is a difficult challenge, like conquering a giant, right? Or, whatever your fear is, or whatever the greatest obstacle that you have yet to overcome. But, you've overcome a lot with God in your wilderness season, you know?